It feels a little odd to be talking about this in such a public way because it's obviously bragging and that's not encouraged. But I'm really proud of us. I mean, if you had told me back in 2013 when I was crying like every night, worried that I wasn't going to ever be able to dig out of the hole that I was in for my student loans, and I would that I would be here like, 9 years later, I wouldn't have believed you. But it really goes to show that if you educate yourself and you read a lot about personal finance and you make some really big change and you hustle like crazy. I mean, in 2013, we were living in an unfinished basement, like 100 pounds overweight, totally stressed out, totally like staring at the bottom of the barrel. Like, it was awful. And now I feel like we're in a really, really solid financial position. It just really makes me believe that you can do anything and change is possible. Hey guys, it's Shannon and John from That DIY Couple, and we are checking in to update you on how our net worth changed in the year 2020.
We've had a lot of changes in our net worth, particularly in the second half of 2020. We didn't do monthly videos during 2020 after June because we got really busy with the baby, but we have a lot to show you and announce and talk about how our net worth has changed.
This time we're actually going to be showing you the spreadsheet that we use to track our net worth. We're actually going to continue showing this to you going forward instead of the PowerPoint. We think this is actually more interesting and more helpful because you can see how you might track yours going forward. So here's the spreadsheet that we use to track our net worth. It's multiple tabs, and some of these references we need to clean up for the previous years, but you can see historically, if you want to, in our previous videos what it was. As you guys know, we track our net worth two ways. We have our traditional net worth, which is just assets minus liabilities, and you can see how that was, negative $98,000 in 2008 when we graduated from college, negative $250,000 when we graduated from law school, and then has gone up over time to be over $1 million, passing the $1 million mark in March of 2020. So we did a video about that, becoming paper millionaires. We also track our conservative net worth, which is the assets minus assets that we wouldn't sell in a liquidation scenario, like our car and our house and our personal property. And so our conservative net worth, last time we updated you in June of 2020, was at $708,000. We still were not millionaires by that metric yet. So we want to show you how things have changed in the last 6 months of 2020.
So let's start out talking about our assets. So we classify our assets into a couple different categories. Investment properties, house, these are all the things in column A on the left of the screen. So the biggest change for our finances in 2020 was that we started selling a lot of our properties. And I'm going to do a whole video on why I'm selling my residential properties right now. At the end of 2020, we were in the middle of doing that. We're filming it a little bit later, so we've actually sold more properties since that time. But at the time, we had sold 4 different properties. So the big change from June 2020 to December 2020 is that the total asset value of those investment properties went down because they're no longer investment properties. They became either cash or investments in other things or accounts receivable, which means properties that we sold, we just haven't transferred the money from like the business account for the property into our own personal account. So that change in the 6 months since June is about $920,000. The total amount of property that we sold, the total value of property that we sold is about $2 million, but that property is owned with other people, other investors, so we don't own 100% of the assets. This is like our pro rata or proportional share of that asset.
So long story short, we sold about $2 million worth of real estate, of which we pocketed about $1 million. We then had costs and there was debt on the property. So we brought in about
$440,000, and we'll get to that in the liability section too.
But the investment properties in June were at $2.8 million, and so by December, having sold 4, they were down to $1.8 million for a change of $920,000.
The value of our house also increased over this time. We had an appraisal done in December because we want to refinance our house. Interest rates right now are at historic lows, like massive historic lows. So we had valued our house around $550,000, but the appraisal came back at $610,000, which is a lot more than we thought. So that's an increase of $60,000. If you watched our previous videos about our net worth, you know that my opinion on appraisals and the value of real estate is kind of like a little bit all over the place, although it turned out that my guesses and the appraisals on some of the properties that we're selling now were generally in the ballpark. I think I was only off by about 20 grand in the whole portfolio of several $1 million. So take that for what it is, but whatever you think, our house is currently valued at $610,000 according to a third-party appraisal. So that's an increase of $60,000.
So we also increased our retirement accounts in 2020. We had about $105,000 in our retirement accounts in June of 2020. As you guys know, we have been really heavily investing in real estate for many, many years and sort of just jumped on the bandwagon of investing in other asset classes. And so we increased it by about $35,000 over the next 6 months for an ending balance of $140,000.
A lot of that is driven by the stock market doing really well in the second half of 2020. So we didn't actually put in, like $35,000 of cash into those accounts. We put in maybe half of that, and the rest is all just increases in the value of the investments because the stock market did really well.
We also have this year-to-date 2020 column, which we should show you, which shows the change from December of 2019 to December of 2020. The investment properties changed in 6 months, going down by $920,000, but changed in 12 months, only going down by $660-something thousand. And that's because in addition to selling a bunch of properties at the end of the year, John also brought a couple of properties at the beginning of the year. The change in our retirement accounts over the course of the full year was close to 60 grand. So I'm really happy that we were able to plug away about $60,000 into our retirement accounts.
The next two rows are two new things to the spreadsheet. So the first is an investment that I've made into a private equity fund, an opportunity zone fund, and some of the proceeds from the sales of our investment properties have gone into that. So that accounts for the $230,000 there. And the accounts receivable are what I described before, which is money from the sale of investment properties that we haven't received yet. So it's just kind of sitting in a bank account, and we hadn't at that time transferred to like our personal bank accounts. A lot of these sales happened at the very end of 2020. So that amount is $211,000. If you sum that up, that's about the total amount of proceeds that we got individually from the sale of all of those investment properties.
Once we paid down the debt and once we paid all the fees. To be clear, everything going into the accounts receivable will also go into the Opportunity Zone Fund, and the value of putting the money into the Opportunity Zone Fund is that it will be tax advantaged. John will do an entire another video about that.
Yeah.
But that's really exciting because it's our first big private equity investment. Most people invest in the public markets, but we're really excited to have the opportunity to grow our money in a new and unique way.
The next row are our checking and savings accounts. So this has increased a lot throughout the year, but the big increase happened in December because Shannon got paid her bonus from her work. So some of that at that time was sitting in our checking accounts. We actually used a little bit of it to pay down student loans, which we'll show you in the liability section. And subsequent to this, like in 2021, we used a lot more of that to pay down some of our debt. So the total amount in our checking and savings accounts in December was about $120,000. As I said, we had used some money that we got at the end of the year to pay down some of our debts, Shannon's student loans. And we subsequent to this used even more of that to pay down our student loans. But this snapshot at the time is about $121,000. So in the 6 months, it's an increase of about $40,000. And over the year, it's an increase of about $68,000.
The value of our personal property, we acquired a few new things, went up by about $2,500 in the course of 6 months and about $5,000 in the course of a year. The value of our car went down. It was worth about 10 grand in June, and by December it was worth about 8,900. That's according to the Kelley Blue Book. The business accounts went down, partially because we sold properties, and so the amounts were distributed.
And those accounts always kind of go up and down because they're like operating accounts for some of these properties. So sometimes there's a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less.
So over the course of the past 6 months, our assets on paper have gone down by about $351,000 as a result of the fact that we sold a bunch of properties. As you'll see when we get to the liabilities, those also went down. So in the net, it's a positive change.
So,
year to date, they went down by about $36,000.
So moving to the liability section, this is the section that I think we're most excited about because, as you know, we've been on a big debt pay down journey for the past 18 months or so. Our credit card debt is still zero, so we're really proud of that. We paid off all of our credit card debt in December 2019.
So we paid off in the year about $5,400, which was really just that 1 month. That was the end for us of a journey of credit card debt pay down.
The big thing that we are really excited about is the student loan payments. So we made a huge payment at the end of December that brought our student loan total down to below $150,000. That was partially from Shannon's bonus, or I would say almost entirely from Shannon's bonus, and also we've been really aggressively paying it since we refinanced that at the beginning of 2020. But the total amount paid off over the 6-month period of time is almost $78,000, which is an astronomical amount of money. And for the year, it's over $100,000. So we paid 6 figures worth of student loan debt back in 12 months, which I think is really, really amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Even though the student loan rate is below 3%, and I know that we could earn better in the market, there's something really, really gratifying about not having that ball and chain. Almost not having that ball and chain.
Our house mortgage, this is just a decrease from slow paying it. We're not paying our mortgage back particularly quickly. We're actually refinancing that house. As I mentioned before, that's where we got the appraisal, but at the time we hadn't done anything with it, so this is just the normal principal pay down of our mortgage.
Somehow that was only about $4,000 because I think it's mostly going to interest right now, and over the course of the year it was about $14,000. Debt on the investment properties went down between June 2020, it was about $1.6 million to $1.1 million, so it went down about $530,000, and that's as a result of having sold the properties and paid off some of the debt. And over the course of the year, it went down by about $545,000. It brings our total reduction of liabilities for the last 6 months of 2020 to about $611,000. And over the course of 2020 to $667,000. So you can see that the real bulk happened at the end of the year when I got my bonus and we sold these properties.
So that means that we have both a change in our assets and liabilities. As you can see in the December 2020 column, our assets decreased, our liabilities decreased by even more. So that means that our total net worth increased a lot. So we went from a total net worth, this is again traditional net worth, total assets minus total liabilities. We went from a traditional net worth in June of 1.28 million to in December, the end of December, 1.54 million, which is a $260,000 increase in 6 months and an almost insane $630,000 increase throughout 2020.
Yeah, that's insane. I don't even know how to process that information. So I literally just computed it, and I'm still what? Is that correct?
So to be clear, although we don't have described how much we make, that's a lot more than we make in one given year. And a lot of that increase is due to the fact that our properties increased a lot in value. The stock market did really well, and we sold a lot of these investment properties and kind of figured out the real value of them and sort of paid off the debt on a lot of them. So that increase is not is a lot more than the money that we took home, but it goes to show the power of having investments that will increase in value separate from the work that you do, and we really enjoyed that in 2020.
Yeah, I'm still in shock.
So going to the conservative net worth, as Shannon mentioned at the beginning of the video, and as we talked about in our previous videos, we calculate our net worth for our own thinking more conservatively. We don't consider stuff that we wouldn't sell if we were in a really bad situation. So that includes, for example, our house. So our conservative net worth is essentially the total assets that we have minus assets that we don't count, which in this case is primarily our house. And then we use all of the total liabilities, including our house, to make that calculation. So it's actually a lot more disfavorable to us than it might be otherwise. But even still, using that calculation, our conservative net worth is now over $900,000. We're almost conservative net worth paper millionaires, which is another astronomical milestone that maybe we'll reach in 2021. But that's a change of $200,000.
Surely we will. Yeah, at this rate.
That's a change of $200,000 since June, and a change of over $560,000 since the beginning of 2020. Yeah, so it's been a tremendous change for us in 2020. I'm really excited to see what 2021 holds. One of our big goals is to pay off all of our student loan debt in 2021. We'll see if we get there, but if we're continuing on the pace that we're going, we should be on pace to do that at the end of the year, and I'd be really excited to get that category on our spreadsheet to zero.
Yeah, my big financial goal for 2021 is to pay off the student loans. And in the longer, medium term, by the time that Ellie, who's now 8 months old, goes to kindergarten, I really want to have paid off the house and have no student loan debt, no credit card debt, no car payment, no house payment. Just be responsible for paying like the taxes on the house, and then have a bunch of other assets that produce income for us, so that I have some flexibility as to what I do professionally. That would be insane.
So we'll update you guys as we go through that throughout 2021. Love to hear your net worth journey. You guys have shared other comments in our previous videos about your net worth and your financial planning. I'd love to talk about that. But until next time,
Do well and always make things better.
Oh.